Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is an update on the status of the Office of Therapeutic Products at FDA, brought to you by the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine. I'm Michael Lemke. I'm the Senior Vice President of Science and Industry Affairs at ARM. Before we get started, just a few words about us. ARM, we are the global voice of the cell and gene therapy sector. We are a not-for-profit advocacy group. Our member organizations include biotechnology companies developing cell and gene therapies, technology and service providers who support these companies in the field, patient organizations, academic research centers who are the source of innovation in the field. With these members, we are on a journey to advance the field with patients as our North Star, as our guide. Along the way, we convene the sector through our meetings, workshops, and webinars such as this one. We provide data and analysis on the field, including clinical trials and financing. We engage with key stakeholders, such as our friends at FDA who are here today. We enable the development of advanced therapies, cell and gene therapies, through advancing best practices. And we work to advocate for appropriate reimbursement models for these therapies to modernize healthcare systems and facilitate patient access. Before I introduce our esteemed guest today, I just want to let you know there's a QR code in the top right hand of the slide. I'll give you a few moments to use that if you would like to get some more information about our organization or the benefits of membership. And just a quick logistical thing, we are in a webinar format today. So you'll be on mute and off camera, but there is a Q&A window which you can use. I would encourage you to use that as opposed to the chat. We'll have a fair amount of time for Q&A today. I got some advanced questions from registrants, a few of my own, but you can also start populating your own questions into that window at any time, and I will moderate them. So with that, I would like to begin the webinar by introducing our two speakers, our two guests today. I'm very honored to have with us Dr. Nicole Verdun, who is the director of the Super Office, the Office of Therapeutic Products at CBER and FDA. And also we are very fortunate to have Dr. Rachael Anatol, the deputy director at OTP. And with that, Dr. Verdun, I will turn over to you.
Oh, great. So thank you. Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here and to share a little bit about some of the updates that we have in the office. So with that, I'm going to share just a couple of slides. Right. All right, so as many of you know, we have established a super office, and I'm Nicole Verdun, and this is my deputy, or our deputy, Dr. Rachael Anatol, and we are really happy to be leading this office at such an exciting time. So a little bit about the super office, and I just have a few slides. We're really going to use the majority of this as more of a conversation in the question and answer format. But the Super Office itself was established at the very end of February 2023. And really the goal of the Super Office is to create flexibility and the capacity for future growth. And that includes improving discipline alignment and increase review capacity, and also to really overall enhance the expertise in the cell and gene therapy space. And so these are sort of the overall strategic goals of the office. This is just a reminder in terms of what the Super Office regulates. We have quite a diverse group of things that we cover within the office. So in addition to gene therapies, which is what a lot of people traditionally think of when they think of our office, we have stem cell and stem cell derived products, terminally differentiated cell therapies, tissues and tissue-based products. We also have blood and plasma derived products. Xenotransplantation has been an area of quite a lot of activity in this past year. That's also regulated in our office. Therapeutic vaccines and other antigen-specific active immunotherapies. And we actually do have some devices for the manufacture or delivery of cells or devices with a cellular component. So we have quite a, a broad array of things that we manage and regulate. So this is an overview of the Super Office structure. So within the Super Office of Therapeutic Products, we now have 6 sub-offices. And specifically, we have the Office of Gene Therapy, CMC, which within that office, we have 2 divisions and 5 branches. That office, in addition to the CMC gene therapy work, we also have, research labs within the office, all of our CMC offices, actually. We have the Office of Cellular Therapy and Human Tissue, CMC. And so within that office, we have 3 divisions. We have cell branches, we have tissue engineering branches, and then we also have our human tissues and reproductive staff. So we have quite a lot of different pieces within the cellular therapy CMC office as well. And then the Office of Plasma Protein Therapeutics, CMC, within that office, we have 2 divisions, a hemostasis division and a plasma derivatives division, and 4 branches within that office. And then Office of Clinical Evaluation, as many of you know, this is where our physicians are, and also our clinical pharmacologists. And within that office, we have 3 divisions. So we have the General Medicine Division, which has 4 branches. We have the Oncology Division, which has 2 branches. And then the hematology division. And so within the hematology division, we have a branch that is benign hematology and then a branch that's malignant hematology. And within the Office of Pharmacology and Toxicology, we have 2 divisions, 4 branches. And then we have quite a robust group of review management and regulatory review staff that also, help to make everything work. And so within that office, we actually have 2 divisions, 4 branches. So this is the overall state of play currently in terms of our structure. And I'd be happy to answer specific questions about this. So we have a lot of recent cell and gene therapy products that we have approved. And I highlight this to say that we're quite proud of just the heterogeneity and the activity in this space. So we've had recent approvals for hemophilia B, for metachromatic leukodystrophy, for metastatic melanoma, to groundbreaking therapies for sickle cell disease, and muscular dystrophy, type 1 diabetes, epidermolysis bullosa, and then also a cell therapy that helps the time to neutrophil recovery. So quite a breadth of things that we're really managing lately, and that Super Office structure has really helped us to do this. I have this slide. It's sort of a simplistic slide here, but I do this I have this slide to sort of say that you can see there is really an acceleration and development in this space. And that's really the overall goal of the Super Office, is to meet that acceleration and growth. And specifically, this highlights how many, the number of original INDs that we received. This is as of 2023, which, as you can see here, approaches about 600. But we have quite a lot of activity here, and we're really able to meet those needs, those growing needs, as we have expanded the office and changed the structure. So really, in the cell and gene therapy space, 80% of rare diseases actually have a genetic basis. And I've highlighted some of the recent approvals, but overall, we've approved 32 cell and gene therapy products, most of which are for rare disorders. We currently oversee, by the numbers, more than 2,600 active investigational products. And most of these are cell and gene therapy products. And so we really are looking to, through organizations like ARM, collaboration is key, flexibility is key, and it's really critical in the development of these cell and gene therapy products. So really, in summary, I'm going to open this up to our webinar, but really, FDA is really committed to working to support the development of novel cell and gene therapies. And we really look forward to forging additional collaborations and partnerships. The new Super Office structure really offers organizational opportunities to meet the growing demand in the field. And we look to vastly expand the availability of novel products for patients with significant unmet need. So I will stop there and we will open it up for questions and dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Verdun, and really appreciative of the collaborative spirit that you and Dr. Anatol are bringing here today. So I'll give the audience a little bit of time to populate the Q&A, but I have some more specific questions about the organization here for you. So, we know it's been publicly shared that CBER is tracking fairly closely to the PDUFA hiring goals, but can you comment a little more specifically on how these things have been distributed across the different how hiring has been distributed across the different offices within OTP?
Oh, okay. So within OTP or within the center?
Within OTP specifically.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So certainly. So as I sort of outlined the different areas here, what Rachael and I have done is we really look at specifically the products where the areas are that we have the significant amount of growth or of expansion, and have really tried to tailor FTEs to the need, if that makes sense. And so it's not something where we've sort of, we just necessarily distribute FTEs equally, but we distribute FTEs where we think that there is a need. And so we have a significant number of, of CMC FTEs in both in the gene therapy space and in cell therapy. We've expanded. We're quite proud of some of the expansion that we've done in our clinical space. So we have a lot of the expertise. I use the term in-house now within our office, in that we have a diverse number of specialties, physician specialties that really are meeting the needs of the products that we're seeing. So we have a significant amount of so we have ophthalmologists, we have cardiologists, we have, obviously an oncologist in both of those groups, in the malignant hematology and oncology space, solid tumor oncology space. But we have quite a lot of different specialties. So in terms of that, and I'd say FTE distribution has really just met the needs, the growing needs. And I don't know, Rachael, if you wanted to add anything there, but.
All I'll add, just so folks are aware, within our immediate office, we also have a policy shop. So our own policy shop that really focuses on advancing, obviously, policy initiatives for the office. And we've grown that a bit as well, which we're excited about. But I echo what Nicole said. I don't really have too much more additional to add.
So it sounds like it's going well with respect to demand driven and a lot of new CMC focused FTEs on the clinical side with the different specialties that are needed. So I'll ask you another question about hiring. One challenge is retention, right? So you're hiring more people, but it's a pretty good jobs market, and there's always that pull from biotech that we recognize. It can be tempting for people to leave FDA for other opportunities. But we did see that the net gain in fiscal year 24, this is some public information that I have, this is for CBER, it's 54 FTEs, which is better than all of fiscal year 2023. Do you think retention is improving, or is that the start of a better trend?
Yeah, I do. And that within our office, we have actually seen, net gains as well. I mean, you mentioned that was a CBER number, but we also have net gains within the office. I do think that things have stabilized with our structure. And as you said, there is always sort of a little bit of churn, but we also have seen the flip, Mike, which is we've seen people that were within industry that actually want to come to FDA. And so we have had
That's
interest
really interesting.
Yeah.
So can you like roughly quantify that? Like how many of your hires have been internal versus external from industry?
Rachael, do you want to try and it's been, it's hard to.
I won't hold you to a number. But.
I know it's hard. It's really, Go ahead, Rachael.
I think it's hard to quantify. I will say, I think we've seen a lot in our CMC area, a lot of really great folks and coming from industry in our CMC office in particular. I think in our clinical group, we've also had, folks coming in from the outside clinically, but I think we're really excited about the growth we've seen coming from industry in our CMC group.
Great. That's great to hear. Maybe I'll polish up my resume. Hopefully Tim's not listening to this right now.
We would love to have you. Yes.
And maybe one more question from me, and then I should get to some of the questions from the audience. And as far as leadership positions go, so there's a much more sophisticated, I would say, the management structure within OTP than there was within OTAD, its predecessor. How is it going with respect to filling those leadership positions that you need?
Yeah, that's gone great. Thanks for asking. We have filled the majority of our leadership positions. We have a couple that we are still working on, but even for some of the ones that show vacant, we do have candidates identified, and so we're really excited about that and the inroads that we've made there. And our goal, Rachael and I are managing this super office, and as you saw, these 6 sub offices, and we really do work on a consistent basis across those offices to make sure that we're all aligning as a leadership team, that we are all focused, that we all have similar goals in mind, so that it can translate to our customer service and our work product. And so we're really excited about the leadership team that we've been able to build.
That's fantastic. That's great. That's really great news. So I'll turn to some audience questions now. And again, everyone loves the spirit of collaboration. There's a question asking if you could elaborate that on a little bit. What types of collaboration and partnerships are you focused on? Is it with product developers or other types of partnerships?
Yeah, I can highlight a few. So there's a lot of different buckets there that we're excited about. So, for example, in the international space, we have this new Cogent pilot, but in addition to that, we really are trying to figure out ways that we can leverage international collaborations such that it really is decreasing the amount of time, hopefully, that it takes for sponsors to get to market across countries, and also minimizing redundancy. Are there ways where we can sort of talk through earlier on in the review cycle what we would like for a non-clinical package, and does that align with potentially what EMA would want for a package? And so we're really looking for ways to collaborate across agencies from an international standpoint, and how can we sort of harmonize. And so I think that that's an active area as well. We have a lot of communication type pilots as well, so that START pilot is one that a lot of people are familiar with. We have identified 4 programs from the Center for Biologics that we'll be working with and collaborating with those sponsors to try and help to bring things. These are, indications for rare diseases where there is significant unmet need. And so we're partnering there as well with sponsors. But the spirit of that communication we're doing really across a lot of programs. And then I'll mention really quickly platform designation, because we talk a lot about that. But there are really a lot of initiatives around how can we collaborate with industry and really lean into the platform type of approaches to try and get more things to market sooner. So there's a lot of conversation, collaboration, discussion around platform. And I will put just something out there. The platform guidance is now posted and it's open for comment. And we really encourage people to comment on that guidance, because we really are going to be looking to that as well. So those are some of the pieces that I wanted to highlight, but there's a lot of conversation and collaboration going on. And Rachael, any other ones you would like to highlight? There's so many.
Yeah, there's so many, but I also want to say, in the spirit of product development, we really see our relationships, I think, with product manufacturers to be collaborative. Like, we want to work with our, sponsors to bring products to market more quickly. And so that's another, I think, example of collaboration that we do on really a regular basis. And, Mike, I know we work closely with ARM, we work with other trade organizations. I think we're really trying to go at it from every sort of angle, really, in terms of our collaboration, all with the same goal in mind of trying to move products forward.
All right, well, it definitely sounds like you're putting your money where your mouth is. Very, very thorough answer. And yeah, these I think regulatory harmonization is something that's very much needed. So good to hear about
Yeah.
that. We're very excited about the STAR pilot and other pilots. And our member Neurogene was actually one of the companies that was selected for that, and some other very interesting gene therapies as well. Question from my friend Chris Schilling at Forge Biologics. So the hiring, it sounds like it's going really well. Can you talk a little bit about, you're bringing in a lot of new people. How are you handling orientation and onboarding? And is there anything that ARM can do or that industry can do in general to support this in an appropriate way?
Yeah, sounds good. Rachel, do you want to take this one or you want me to? It's always
Sure,
fun.
I'll start. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll start, Nicole, and then you can jump in. So I think, internal training and ensuring that there's consistency in advice and feedback that we give to sponsors, I think go hand in hand. At least I've heard them come along collectively. So, the center and the agency, when a new hire comes on board, have training programs already set up for new hires, courses that they must attend. Within the office, we have seminar series. We send people out to external meetings. We keep up, we have as Nicole mentioned, a research lab program that's really trying the goal. And I saw in the chat there are a couple of questions about the research program, which is really aimed at trying to fill gaps in the regulatory space to do work that can advance products across collectively across the field. And I think that, folks in our labs, they give training. Our folks are really great about staying up to date on the latest and greatest science. But I think, are there ways ARM could help? I think so. I think we already have some engagements with outside organizations for educational activities. Nicole and I, have some ideas in mind of additional training and seminar series that we'd like to bring into the office that I think would help get at some of the areas that we've identified. We also are looking to bring someone on board who can really be a trainer for staff in the office. So I mentioned that the center and the agency have training programs, but we're looking to have someone who can do hands-on training from the first day people come on board. There's just, people are really, there's a lot to learn when you come into FDA. And so this position would help with training, also help ensure consistency across the offices, developing tools for reviewers that they can use. And so again, we're trying to come at it in a multifaceted approach.
Yeah, and I would also add to that Rachel and I have created a really strong leadership team, and so when people on board and are new, no one is on an island, right? So they're integrated into that, into teams, into a leadership structure that Rachel and I are what I would describe as hands-on, and so there's a lot of just harmonization and onboarding and collaboration with new trainees that really sort of adds to sort of the structure that we've already built and is strong. So it's been great. Integrating new people, new ideas is also wonderful. But we've done it in a I would say a responsible way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, really, really important that you provide training for new people, and we're happy to support it in any way we can, including the Lunch and Learn series that ARM is doing with FDA right now. You mentioned a role for the research groups and training. One of the attendees asked, what kind of work do these research groups do, and what is their role overall in OTP? You mentioned training, obviously, but what are the other things that they do, and how do they interact with the rest of the office?
So I can start. So the research program is really set up in a way to answer questions that are important to advance the field, but that are maybe not being undertaken outside of FDA. So we do a lot of horizon scanning to identify both upcoming areas where we need to focus, but also gaps in the field that we think we need to help address. And so we have some folks in the research labs who do full-time research, but many of the people in the labs, I would say most, are doing research and review. So they have a joint role, which I think really brings something unique, I think, to our review program. But the overall goal is really to work on science to advance the field as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have people who are working on the science hands-on and involved in the review. It's really smart. So the next question from Jean Zhu. This is a little bit of a tough question in my view, but I'll ask it. Jean's asking about the platform technology guidance, which you mentioned, Dr. Verdun, and the scope of it. And is it possible, or is there a pathway for a CDMO to submit for that designation? And I'll just add, this is my part of the question. Or is the AMT, the Advanced Manufacturing Technology designation, maybe more appropriate for a CDMO, depending on specifically on what the process is or the technology is?
So Nicole, do you want to go?
You can take the piece and then I'll take another. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think, our platform guidance and the platform, it's the platform legislation that came from Congress says that to receive platform designation, you have to have first an approved biologics license application or new drug application. And so typically we do not see that CDMOs are submitting license applications or taking products from development to the development stage. But the platform designation program, we think is a really exciting program to work to advance the field. But even outside of platform designation, we do allow sponsors to leverage their own internal information. We allow sponsors to leverage information that a CDMO may have because they work across programs. And so I think right now, I don't see that there's a clear path for CDMO to have platform designation. But I think, as Dr. Marks has also described, we think that we will sort of iterate on our platform designation, right? Right now, we're sort of at phase 1, but over time, it's going to advance and it's going to develop. So, what might be in place now may not be what's in place a few years down the road. And then I think, the advanced manufacturing designation probably does make more sense for someone like a CDMO.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So is it fair to say that your approach and your view of platforms goes beyond the platform designation in the guidance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not having platform designation does not mean you can't rely on data that's already been developed.
Yeah, and just to reinforce something that you said, the designation was created by statute. So,
Right.
we really don't have the flexibility and the guidance to go outside the boundaries of what the statute called for.
But we are using platform-like principles within the office. And really leveraging not just the CMC and the non-clinical, which I think was a bit, more of the foundation in the guidance, but we are also seeing, are there ways that we can leverage clinical information as well? Is there across programs, or for example, where you have a product where there's the same AAV backbone, but different indications, or just ways that we can leverage potentially safety information across different disease areas, but similar constructs. So the principles we really are using absent the formal designation ability.
That's really interesting. The comment about clinical. So we call these things building blocks, as distinct from a platform. That term will catch on, trust me. But maybe another question. This came in in advance from the audience, since you brought up clinical. One of the attendees asked about accelerated approval for gene therapies. And I know you and Dr. Marks have talked about this, Dr. Verdun, but can you talk a little bit about how the office is executing on the vision of using accelerated approval for gene therapies, and when you think that's the appropriate pathway, and maybe what is it not necessarily the appropriate pathway?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to speak in generalities here, but I will try. So we are definitely interested in using accelerated approval more. We really think that there's a lot of opportunity, specifically in the gene therapy space, in the rare disease space, where you have biomarkers that are reasonably likely to predict, or where you have intermediate clinical endpoints. With a lot of rare diseases, as many of us know, sometimes it takes quite some time, multiple decades, to really develop the clinical manifestations of the disease. And so to have a trial where you have to wait to see those is really limiting in terms of getting things to patients quicker. And so, yes, the short answer is we really are looking to leverage accelerated approval in those situations. We also are in situations where traditional approval, where we can get to a traditional approval with the data that we have, we're also looking to do that as well. So, there are situations, I will say, where with a traditional approval, we don't have the ability to have these, randomized trials or large trials in disease areas where there's just not a lot of patients. But we have, with the endpoints that we do have, we have effect. Like, we can see a robust effect, and we're really looking to also lean into traditional approval in sort of non-traditional ways, where we might have to have single arm trials or smaller numbers of patients in certain situations. And so as an agency, we really are flexible, and we have built a clinical team that leans into that notion and is flexible in that regard.
Great, thank you for that answer. Here's maybe turning back a little bit to organizational questions. And so there are a lot of people, including myself, work remotely now, and for since the pandemic, there's been a big move to that. Is that changing at all now with the pandemic being over, and are people coming back to the office at FDA, or to the extent that you are still working remotely at OTP? Do you feel that there's an effect on the consistency of advice and decision making, or just how's that dynamic going overall in your view?
Rachel, you gotta go ahead.
No, so folks are working in a hybrid environment in the Center for Biologics, so coming into the office and also working from home some of the time. I think that in terms of the consistent advice, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to say there. One is, as Nicole mentioned, we're really striving to have a strong leadership team. And so before we have a sponsor interaction, we have an internal interaction. And in those internal discussions, Nicole and I and other members of the senior leadership team, really, the office directors across the sub offices, we are all going to those internal discussions to bring in consistency, to make sure that the advice we're giving across development programs is consistent where possible. There sometimes are differences in products that may not seem significant, but that lead us to give different advice. But where there should be consistency, we are working to ensure that consistency is happening. And I don't think personally that working at home or working within the office really changes how we're going about that. I really think it's sort of like, as Nicole said, the hands-on leadership, I think, that's really making the biggest impact there. And then, I know there's questions a lot from the outside in terms of, I think, meeting with sponsors and in what formats are we meeting with sponsors? I think the agency announced maybe in the beginning of the year, it's hard to remember the timing, but that we were moving towards allowing face-to-face meetings for any type of meetings and not just certain meetings. Within OTP, if someone requests a face-to-face meeting, we are working to grant that meeting request in that type of format. And so we're not seeing a lot of face-to-face meeting requests, but we are, when we do get them, we are granting them. And even when we meet with folks virtually, we all have our cameras on, really trying to ensure, that people can see each other, which I think helps with the conversation.
So that's really interesting. I don't know if I would say it's concerning that you're not seeing a lot of face-to-face meeting requests. So I would challenge our attendees a little bit to, make those requests if you think it's needed. Do you, Rachael, do you think you'll get to a point maybe later on this year where FDA will be comfortable reporting some metrics around what you were just talking about, how many face-to-face meetings there are, and how many are granted versus turned down versus written responses?
That's a great question. I'm assuming that there's sort of an agency, the agency would put out that sort of information, probably broken down by centers, but not broken down by offices within centers. I suspect whatever the agency normally provides in that regard, they will.
Yeah, I can just say here though, Mike, that there are a few things here. One, there's some sponsors that are still requesting written response only, like that's the actual request. And so those are granted as they are as they are requested. The other bucket, I will say, is just from a senior management standpoint in terms of this notion that, we're asking for a face-to-face and it's being converted. I've seen a lot less of that. And so I can say that for, for certain that's not happening as much. If there is a unusual situation where that happens, for example, and I think this is helpful, which is why I share it. There was one request that came in. There was one question. It was a regulatory question, like, is this acceptable? The answer is yes, it's acceptable. And it was requested as a 1-hour TCON. And it was literally one question. I'm not making this up. So that situation is probably not the best, use of anyone's time for an hour TCON. But I will say that we are really, we're really leaning into having more of those interactions, and there's a lot less of that happening within our office. I can't speak to sort of all offices, but there's a lot less of that within our own office.
Yeah, so I smiled when you described that example, but to be fair, there are a lot of new developers, and the field is still new in many senses.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering, is there a need for more education of developers and about the way to maximize the use of face-to-face time, if that's what you want from FDA, and what situations does it make more sense to meet face-to-face versus written response only? And maybe that's something that ARM could help out with.
I really do like that. I think it's quite accurate to say that there is quite a mix in terms of, new developers, seasoned developers. And the requests sort of come in that way, as do packages, right? In terms of the some of these requests. So I think that is an opportunity for ARM to maybe engage there and help in that regard, because we do see some of that.
Yeah, and we've had some conversations about that, in the context of RMAT designation, for example. But I think maybe there's a broader need in general, it sounds like.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. So maybe shift gears a little bit. There's several questions about xenotransplantation, and you mentioned this earlier And there's questions about, are there considerations about building out that part of the office? Are there any plans for guidance in that area, or what can you say in general about xenotransplantation?
Yeah, I think we can both take parts of this. I'll take one, and then maybe Rachel, you want to take guidance. So this has been a significant area of growth. What I will say right now is a lot of the requests that we get are sort of like N of one type of things, right? So it's just, we have a patient, we think this patient will be a great candidate for it. This patient has a lot of end organ damage and stage in some regards for some of the requests, and we want to try this Xeno. And so that's sort of the nature of where we are currently. I do see that as more of these are successful, that the field will shift to hopefully become more development of a program. And so where we can really get good clinical information to advance the field that's not in sort of a single IND type of way. And so I'll turn it over to Rachel to comment a bit more on sort of guidance issues. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Picking up on that last part, this is an area of personal interest for me, and Nicole and I are both committed. We really do want to see the xenotransplant field move away from single patient treatment to doing more robust research. We think there are some roadblocks to getting there. And that is an area we're talking about internally. We would anticipate probably some future communications on this topic coming from us, and really, I think, signaling our commitment to moving development forward in this area. So I think you could anticipate some communications in the future.
And we are certainly willing to build the team and within our office as the need builds. We would that would be exciting.
Yeah, and just a little bit of inner workings. We've identified across our CMC, farm talks, and clinical groups, a key team of xenotransplant experts within the office who, speaking to consistency, they are reviewing answers to questions. They are, sometimes we get questions from industry through our Office of Communication. They're the go-to team for those questions. So really working to ensure consistency in that space.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think it's a really important area, and it's one that some of these indications can't be addressed by a cell or gene therapy modality necessarily. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the future. There's some other organizational questions about. Basically, I'll kind of summarize them in the sense to say, do you anticipate releasing a revised org chart at any time in the near future with some of the other leaders of the offices or branches identified?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I can work with our Office of Communications to make sure that we have that updated.
Okay, I think that would be great, because there are a lot of questions.
Yeah.
People
and
are kind
I saw
of interested.
there was a question early on. I just wanted to clarify. So the review management, the project managers for our office are within our super office. So that is the ORMRR group, the Office of Review Management group that I highlighted on our slide. And so they do sit within our office and our structure.
Okay, so the regulatory project managers are within the OTP structure.
They are, and they're very integral into the meeting structure, our communication, working across the sub offices. So yes, they're an integral part of our super office.
The train conductors, if you will.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question about combination products, and we haven't seen really many of these in cell and gene therapy yet, but is the right approach to approach the Office of Combination Products first, or OTP, if someone is working on one of these products, assuming it involves cell and gene therapy?
So I think if a product involves a cell or gene therapy, it's going to be regulated by OTP. And so I think if there's a question about how will my delivery device be regulated, or, I want to use, even a drug or, some other type of device with my cell and gene therapy product, I don't necessarily think that folks need to go to the Office of Combination Products. We deal with those questions pretty regularly for these products. And so I think folks can come directly to us, and then, the specifics of a submission to another center versus a single submission, or how we work with another center, we can discuss in the context of the development program.
Okay, that's really useful then. Quite a few questions, and you talked a lot about collaboration and how you interact within the office. There are quite a few questions about CDER and when you interact with CDER, in what ways, and what types of things might cause you to bring reviewers or clinical reviewers over from CDER, and in what situations do you do that?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I mentioned in my overview that we've done a lot within this past year to actually bring a lot of that expertise internal. So, the experience of some of your members may have been in recent past that we had we actually went to Center for Drugs to use or leverage some of the expertise and in terms of specialty for physician specialties, because we did not have that internal. So we have a lot of that internal. So going beyond that, though, which is the other piece that I think is very important, we have a lot of touch points with Center for Drugs to make sure that we are not communicating with each other in terms of where we are with certain disease areas, right? And certain endpoints that we are accepting, or and sort of what their thoughts are and where they are with things. And so we do a lot of information sharing in several different ways. That could be through the rare disease space. It's through specialty space. For example, the ophthalmologists in the various centers have meetings where they all get together and discuss some endpoints in ophtho diseases and otherwise. And so there are a lot of touch points across centers. In terms of the cell and gene review, a lot of that is done within our office, and we occasionally do have formal consults in certain areas, but I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Rachel, anything to add? I think that's a very thorough answer. Okay, here's an interesting question that I've thought about, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit. Some of these products, and I could think of examples of like vascular grafts that involve cells, some products that are being developed for orthopedic indications could potentially be used in multiple indications. And do you think the platform designation is maybe an appropriate way to approach that? Because it can be difficult for developers to get approval for these products in multiple indications. Or if not the platform designation, do you have other thoughts about future mechanisms that there might be for broadening of indications prior to BLA approval?
So I'm trying to sort of wrap my head around the question. So we're talking about a specific
let's just say for
that has an approval, but or has a program in a specific disease area and wants to sort of broaden it to include other indications and or disease areas. You said prior to approval.
I think one example would be, and whether or not it's prior to approval, I'm sure people would like it to be prior to approval, but the program might focus on different anatomic areas where the product might be used.
Yes, I mean, it's hard to sort of speak in the hypothetical on that one, but if the data supports that, often what we do is we consider the indication that the sponsor sends to us that they're interested in. And so if you're interested in sort of a more broad approach or indication, then I guess we're open to that. And there are potential ways to sort of make the argument beyond sort of what narrowly was studied in a trial, how it's applicable across a broader range of indications, then we're open to that conversation.
Great. That's a great clarification. Go ahead, Rachel. Sorry.
And Mike, I'll just add that, that's the type of thing where I think if folks, are thinking this is what we'd like to do, we'd like to design a development program that can look at, like you said, different anatomical locations, or maybe a drug targeting different diseases that have the same underlying mechanism. That's, we'd like to talk to you about that early on, that's your overall approach to your development, because I think, that's when we have the best opportunity to really scope out, okay, what is this going to look like? What could you leverage? What is the appropriate design for a trial? Could you have different arms looking at different, sort of different indications? I think the more you can think about that at an earlier stage, that the smoother the clinical trial process will be in general.
Yeah, sounds like a good opportunity for a face-to-face meeting early on. Yeah, okay. So we're getting kind of close to the end. There were some questions submitted in advance and several in the Q&A window about rare disease. And I'll use the term, which is not necessarily established, but ultra rare disease, meaning, and I'll define that not with a number, but saying that these are things that aren't being pursued by developers currently because there's no commercial business case for them. And can you talk a little bit about OTP's efforts specifically in the area of ultra rare disease, and thoughts and any pilot programs that currently exist or that you're thinking about that might facilitate getting these treatments to these patients who really aren't being served currently.
So as Nicole said, so much of what we have in our office is for rare diseases already and ultra rare diseases. What I can tell you is that you have a commitment from Nicole and I and the rest of our senior leadership team that this is an area that we very much need to focus on. I think that, Dr. Marks has talked about, CBER's focus on rare disease. Nicole and I have that same focus for the office. We are internally within our office doing some go-aways to White Oak campus face-to-face with our senior leadership team to talk about how, what can we really do or think differently to really promote development of these products for rare diseases, including, what some folks refer to as ultra rare. We understand that, traditionally designed trials are going to be tough. We are thinking about, we're looking to some of our international, colleagues to, some programs that have been set up internationally, or maybe some organizations that have been set up internationally to bring products to development. I will just say that I think in all regards, Nicole and I are really open to anything folks want to bring us. I know sometimes folks say, well, I don't want to ask because maybe they would say no or what have you. If you have something you'd like to propose, ask us. We are completely open to it. And we are really committed to this area in particular. And we know there are programs that aren't going to be developed by industry. I think that we both are very committed to trying to figure out what the pathways are for those products.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and I won't ask you to be too specific, but some other thoughts that you've given me just with that answer are: do you think are there ways in which some of these indications or diseases might be able to be effectively pooled, and do platforms have a role to play there? Not necessarily the platform designation, but the broader concept of platforms. And do you think there are situations where you might have a biomarker, for example, that's common to different genetic variants in the same condition, and you might be able to look at that in the context of a pooled sort of a basket trial or something to that effect.
I think that yes, that is something that we would be open to considering for sure. And yes, I'll just say yes. So
yeah, I was actually going to say that before you use the term basket trial, but it is something that I think that sponsors actually can take more of a proactive role in sort of designing those types of trials. I wish we saw more of those. We don't, though. We don't see as many as you would think.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm sort of wondering why that is, and maybe perhaps this is another area for education broadly for the field. I mean, I think would you say that you see it more in oncology, and you have a background
Yes.
there, or okay?
Yes.
And so maybe just some food for thought there. And we can't cover it today, obviously, but for our members and others who are thinking about this problem to look to examples in the oncology field.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I mean, there were many, many more questions, but you've been very patient and really appreciate it. And I'm sure member our attendees appreciate it. Is there anything else that either of you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Well, I would just like to, stress, hopefully you've heard this from both Rachel and I today, but we really are open to collaboration, to your thoughts, to how things are going. If there is advice, I get asked this sometimes, and I really do like to highlight this. If there is advice that was received 5-10 years ago, and there's a lot that has changed in the field as a whole, right? With technology, with with trials and sort of what we're able to do. Don't hesitate to come back and have additional conversations with us if something is not quite working or feasible or otherwise. We really are open to having communication, collaboration, and forging those partnerships. And so I just wanted to leave it there and thank everybody for that. We share common goals here.
Yeah.
So
yes, absolutely. So yeah, again, thank you both. Thank you to the audience for all of your great questions. Apologize for not getting to most of them. I tried to look for common themes and identify them, but I think we had a pretty good conversation here. And I can ensure everyone that will continue. So if you didn't get your questions answered today, if you have other thoughts, there will definitely be many opportunities in the future to share them. This webinar was recorded, by the way, also. So if you didn't see all of it, or if you know people that you think might be interested, we're going to be posting that on ARM's YouTube site soon. So Dr. Verdun, Dr. Anatol, thank you again. I hope you have a very nice weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you both maybe in person at some point in the near future.
yes, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.